LMNT, also spelled LMNT, is one of the fastest growing electrolyte companies in the world. And instead of just drinking it, I figured I would find the co-founder of the company, Robb Wolf, and have him on my podcast to ask him questions like, what was it truly like to build one of the biggest brands in the electrolyte space, in the fitness space, and what was he doing for the last 30 years that allowed him to make this shift? And also what his advice to young entrepreneurs entering the world of entrepreneurship is. Should people go to college? Should people start businesses? Or are you just gonna fail?
Welcome everybody back to another episode. Today I am joined by Robb Wolf, the co-founder of LMNT, also spelled LMNT, one of the best electrolyte supplements that I've ever consumed as a 22-year-old kid. And you probably consumed it or seen an ad by Andrew Huberman, something like that. Robb, thanks for coming on the show today.
Huge honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I bumped into your product last year. I was in Arizona and my friend just said, hey, you should try this. And I've never really tried an electrolyte supplement before. It was your citrus salt flavor. And when I tell you, like, my first interaction with your brand and just tasting it, like, I bragged to my mom, my dad, my sister. I had my family order like a bunch of LMNT, and all my friends, when I moved to Boston, all of them drink it. All of my fitness friends. It's pretty insane. I would say, cult-like following that the brand has. What was that? I mean, what's that like to know that you've contributed and built something with James and that has that cult-like following behind it?
I mean, it obviously it's incredible. It's not my first rodeo on that. So I co-founded the first and fourth CrossFit affiliate gyms in the world, and so there was a day where nobody other than maybe a couple of hundred people back in 2000, 2001 knew what this thing CrossFit was, and then that clearly took over the fitness space in many regards. And I wrote the first book that made the New York Times within what is now considered like the paleo diet genre.
Yeah.
And so I've seen things go from a point where there's literally so my daughters are in a homeschool program and they're covering some things like Galileo and Kepler and stuff like that. And so there was a day when there wasn't a notion other than like the geocentric model of the universe, that the Earth was the center of the universe. And then one day somebody makes some observations and they come up with an idea, and they have a different orientation around the way that the universe is oriented. And so I've been fortunate to be at ground zero of a number of things that kind of changed the world and changed the way that we look at things. So I don't want that to sound like I knew for a fact that LMNT was going to be successful, but when we founded this thing, I told James, our CEO, I said, this thing's either going to be wildly successful or it's going to be like a plane into a mountainside. Like there's going to be no middle ground. This is either the worst idea in the world or we really have identified this kind of need hidden in plain sight.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's insane that you have co-founded CrossFit. I mean, it's such a buzzword in the fitness community. I guess the question comes to this. My audience is like 18 to 25-year-old kids that figure out life for the first time, want to be an entrepreneur. And I think everyone who wants to be an entrepreneur has this desire of like, I'm going to start a $50 million company. I'm going to be really successful. In your experience, because you have been at the frontier of most of these big revolutions in the world of fitness, paleo, CrossFit, LMNT with electrolytes, do you think it's more of like a person character trait of like how you were raised that determines success? Or do you think that you're really good at spotting gaps in the market and most people can just learn that? Do you think it's a learned behavior, or do you think that most people are destined to probably not be insanely successful, and then there's a select few like yourself that go out and frontier and pioneer different spaces? What would you say to that?
That's a really, really good question and group of questions. I love making money. I love being successful, but my main motivator has been to help people. And I nearly died from ulcerative colitis almost 30 years ago, and it was getting into kind of paleo ketogenic diets that really saved my life. And I was on track to go to medical school at that time. And when I had this experience of reversing my ulcerative colitis and kind of recognizing how dietary and lifestyle interventions are so powerful and so not well suited to the standard medical environment. Like doctors are wonderful, but you get 10 or 15 minutes with folks, you're buried under paperwork. Like that just wasn't the way that I wanted to do things. And so it was maybe a year after that I was poking around online and I found that first iteration of the CrossFit.com website, started hanging out with the folks with that, opened the first CrossFit affiliate gym in Seattle, Washington in 2003, the fourth CrossFit affiliate gym in Chico, California in 2004. And I really just focused on trying to help people. Like I felt like I had some information that would disproportionately help people, particularly folks with gut and autoimmune issues, which is what I've struggled with over time. And I have been pretty good at finding these kind of cracks in markets. Like
Yeah.
there's this information gap, and oftentimes this information gap is something that is contrary to the mainstream narrative. Like we're just barely getting to a spot where, say, like low carb diets are being acknowledged as potentially being both therapeutic and helpful. Like 20 years ago, it was an Atkins type approach to eating was looked at, that it was just going to kill you overnight, and
Yeah.
it was terrible. And maybe that's true, or maybe there was a real information gap there. And people who do like day trading and stocks and things like that, this is why insider trading is illegal. Like if you have an inside track on information, you can really disproportionately tackle something. And just as an aside, it was about 3 years ago that my third book, Sacred Cow, which talks about sustainable animal husbandry, and it makes the case that maybe cattle are not the primary driver of climate change and whatnot. 6 years ago, we started seeing a big investment from people like Bill Gates and very wealthy, famous people in alternative meat options, where they would grow meat in a lab and either cell culture or some different methods. And the claim was that these things were sustainable. And sustainability really breaks down to energy inputs and outputs. And I was just like, there's no way this is sustainable. Like you
Yeah.
can't beat sunlight, grass, cows. And I really raged against that for a long time, including writing a book and doing a film called Sacred Cow, talking about this stuff. But then I realized one day, I'm like, well, shoot, there's a bunch of money going into these things. A bunch of these companies are now publicly traded. I could start shorting these guys. And I started doing that. And again, I'm not trying to brag, but like I did really, really well on that
That's awesome.
because I had some information that was, who's going to bet against Bill Gates? Like he's the smartest dude in the room and everything. Well, he's a very smart guy. He's incredibly wealthy, but they had bought a bill of goods that just a little bit of back of the napkin math showed that the thermodynamics simply didn't work out on this thing. And so I was able to do well with that. I've done pretty well shorting some green energy type things, like wind and solar and whatnot. I think there's applications for those things, but folks get into the different areas with this exuberance, assuming that they understand these really complex systems. And I think with a little bit of a steeping in evolutionary biology, economics, and thermodynamics, basically the energy inputs and outputs of a system, you can really go a long ways with that. And that's a little bit different than finding this gap in the sodium story, as it relates to element. That actually circled back again to my health, where a low carb diet was really helping me a lot to manage gut and autoimmune issues. But trying to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu now,
That's
trying to
awesome.
do CrossFit. Low carb diet is awful for that. Like it's a slog, like it's already a slog. But a good friend of mine, Luis Villasenor, who had been using a ketogenic diet very successfully for high level athletes, he understood, and other people in that like coaching level understood, that there was a desperate need for significant amounts of sodium for people, particularly on these low carb diets. So again, there was like this information gap that existed there, and I was fortunate enough to be at the right place, the right time, and was able to tinker with this. And we found that there was probably a real opportunity within, center of the bullseye, like low carb, paleo, keto type diets, CrossFit, general athletics, police, military, fire. Like we started finding these larger and larger circles of populations that we were pretty sure would benefit from a very sodium forward type of electrolyte. But again, the big picture thing with this is that I was really motivated to help people. And I was just patient to try to find things that would both help people, but maybe had a little bit of an information inside track. I have seen people be successful where they'll just say, "Well, I'm going to stand this like protein powder company up or this thing up or that thing up to make money. And they maybe do it, but like it's almost through like force of will versus finding a unique angle in the market. Like if you find a unique angle, you've got really great kind of wind at your back. Whereas if you're just going to like stand something up and SEO optimize it and do all that type of stuff, you can do it, but it's oftentimes you don't get that again, like the wind at your back, where the
Yeah.
thing is comparatively easy because you're operating in a space where you've found a unique answer to a problem.
It's interesting. There's so many questions off of what you just said, but the thing that's sticking out is a lot of big influencers, people with big audiences. I think they do prop up products, maybe like a hydration drink or some type of thing, just because they want to be able to use and capture the audience they have to monetize quickly. And what I noticed with Element, before I knew who you were or what your story was like, I just knew off the first taste of the drink was just like, I have never tasted anything this good in the world of electrolytes. Like I've had liquid IV, that's fine. But when anyone's ever like, how do I get over a hangover? How do I supplement after working out really hard? I'm like, Element. It's more expensive than most things, but it's definitely worth it. And I love it to the core. And I think that it's probably because you actually genuinely wanted to solve a problem and not just prop up something and make, a couple hundred million dollars and sell it to a private equity company later down the line, which is really, I think a lot of people, especially younger people like me, we miss it because I'm just like so focused on getting out of a bad situation, trying to make money and not actually solve a real problem.
Right, right. Well, it's tough. There are people who land and they hit a scene. We see these tech stories where people are in a space for 5 years and then they exit for ridiculous amounts of money. I'm 30 years into my career doing this stuff.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why I had some benefit is I think there was a decent amount of wisdom there, but there was also like we had a podcast since 2007 and it's still running. There was just a shitload of material that was put out there trying to help people. And so you build this goodwill. And I haven't gone to the well that often asking for folks to buy swag from me.
Yeah.
It's like, here's some books, here's some seminars. I had a keto masterclass that would really help people to dial in ketogenic diets and also like figure out if a ketogenic diet wasn't right for them. Like I was had put as much effort into that platform trying to help people figure out if it was a good or not a good fit, and if it wasn't a good fit, where would you land on like your kind of macronutrients and whatnot. And it built a lot of goodwill, but it's a grind. Like there's just a lot of work that has to go into building that trust over the long haul. You think about like Elon Musk. He was right at the founding of PayPal.
Yeah.
Now PayPal is such like it's just woven into the fabric of the world. But there was a day when that was a brand new idea and it was like a novel concept. And so now he's 30 plus years downrange in his career. So I think if, a thing that I've noticed where Element has been disproportionately successful, we're not looking to be acquired. We're probably not going to do an IPO. It's a possibility somewhere way down the road.
Yeah.
We hope to be, privately owned over the long haul.
That's
and
awesome.
what that allows us to do is to just have like a 10-year time horizon. Like we make decisions based around 5 and 10-year plans versus let's try to keep our books as cooked as we can.
So
Try
that you
to
can sell for a
just
high.
like go like crazy, and then like hopefully somebody buys this like shitty item before that somebody looks
The
behind
bubble
the curtains and
bursts.
figures and the bubble bursts and everything. And we may look back 5 years from now and be like, oh my god, we should have sold like we're just selling salt. It's nothing fascinating, but we have really awesome customer service. I think the product's convenient, it tastes good. From the day we launched, we've had a free home how to make it at home guide, and so we've always told people if it's too expensive, just do our home brew guide. Like go buy some salt, buy some potassium chloride, buy some magnesium citrate, lemon juice, mix up your own. Like so, price shouldn't be a limiter, and we felt confident that if we just help a lot of people, that this will work out over the long haul. But I think both in like the founding or thinking about things, and then also when you start running a business, I think people have too much of a desire to exit versus like just run this thing well and enjoy it. Because James and I have talked about this, and we've talked to the team about this. We could sell this thing today and make a boatload of money. It would
Yeah.
sell really well. And then what do I do? Like,
I,
what
I
do I
think
do then?
I think you'd find something in the fitness world to keep pushing. But
I,
I totally get it. Like honestly, most people that I speak to on the podcast, even Ryan Gardner with Bucked Up, like no shame to him, but he's looking for an exit, a couple
mhm.
$1 billion with him and his brother, and that's like totally cool. Even like a lot of energy drink companies like Ghost, they just got bought out by Dr Pepper, so it's like I see that play, but I've never really talked to somebody who genuinely wants to build something massive, and you already have something that is easily sellable, and you choose not to, which is that's amazing. So
And again, it may be a dumb idea. We maybe look back 10 years from now and be like, oh my God, that was the worst idea ever. But it feels good, and we're having a lot of fun with it. And the, circling back, I might find other things to tinker with in the fitness space, but it's something else that I see within this founder scene is you get a good idea and you assume that you're the smartest person in the room and that you're going to come up with another good idea and another good idea. And I'm not that confident of it. I remember, I forget if it was Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett. He said, I have 1,000 ideas a day and I act on one idea a decade.
a decade, yeah.
And I think that that's another thing is that it's really easy. I've seen a lot of people in this space still get a modicum of success and they just assume that everything that they do is going to be equally successful. And I am self-critical enough that I really don't know that I would be smart enough to, again, maybe in 10 years, I'll see something there. Like
Yeah.
a good friend of mine, Dave Dooley, he would be a great guy for your podcast. He and I were chatting, and this was almost 10 years ago. And we had been looking at the pending issues within Social Security. And he came up with this idea of a gap insurance on pensions and Social Security. It's called a Plan Gap, and PRIA is this thing that he stood up, and it's got $3 billion assets under management now.
That's
And
amazing.
he
Wow.
too is looking at driving this thing forward over the long haul versus just a quick exit, but allows him to operate in a way that is just really different. There's a very different sentiment around something that's like, hey, I'm going to take this thing from the swamp to the dirt road to the paved road to the highway,
Yeah.
and have this long arc with it.
So to go all the way back, because I want to I always try to figure out when somebody found something big, what is like the early moves that you make as a human that ultimately determine your trajectory. And I think that the fact that you didn't just randomly start this and you actually had a huge history of like 30 years of building things in the fitness space, books and coaching and CrossFit gyms, and now you have Element. For the younger people out there that are thinking about starting a business, they don't know if it's worth it. They don't know if they should start something. They might think that they have an idea, but they don't know if it's a good idea. What is your advice to them? If you could go all the way back to when you're like early on in the entrepreneur world, what do you say to that person?
Again, a really great question. So I'm not a good operator. I'm a pretty good idea guy. I'm great at generating content. I'm pretty good at building community. But James, our CEO, is an amazing operator, and really, I've seen no one build teams like he does. Like we only have 42 employees at Element now,
Oh,
and
wow.
we have a revenue that is far better on a dollar per employee basis than most tech companies. Like it's amazing, and we're very fortunate on that. But this was all an outgrowth of him being a great operator and being able to really build phenomenal teams. If I was alone doing this with my wife, I'd be selling it out of the trunk of my car. And so I think really recognizing who you are and what skills you bring to bear with the situation. And what was interesting about James, he had this thing called Proton Enterprises, where he knew he was good at operations. He knew he was good at building teams. He had a team, maybe 4 or 5 people, and he would find influencers within the health and wellness space and then try to help them develop CPGs, consumer product goods. and develop and take those to market. He worked with Dr. David Perlmutter, the guy that did the
That's
Garden
so
of
cool.
Life line. And funny enough, James lived down the street from Dr. Perlmutter when he was growing up in Florida, like in
Wow.
Naples, Florida. Yeah. So he had that early, lifetime, early life relationship with them. But that Garden of Life line was acquired for like $620 million, something like that, by Nestle. So that was a great exit, and it was a really great validation that James is good at building teams. But what was interesting, when he met me, he was actually at this investors event that my wife and I showed up at. And my wife and I were the smallest fish in that pond by like 5 orders of magnitude. Like there were all these big names there, and I was well respected. But when you looked at like the number of social media, contacts that I had, revenue, all that stuff, we were much, much smaller than all these other people. But
Yeah.
James basically interviewed everybody there, and he just felt like I was an ethical, smart, conscientious person, and he wanted to work with me and try to develop some ideas. And we spitballed a lot of different stuff, and we arrived on this electrolyte thing because I was describing my whole health journey in this scene within the paleo, keto, CrossFit space. And we felt like there was easily like a 30, $40 million company there.
Yeah.
That should be totally attainable. And what was interesting about James, like, people know that I'm involved with Element. I'm not like on every, ad and reel and all that stuff. But like the way our CX handles questions is influenced by me. Like James describes it, that my DNA is woven through the whole company. Like the way that we make decisions, we have this guide, business via biology, that is influenced by this thing, the hallmarks of health, and we can get into that if you
Yeah.
remind me later. But James understands that he's a great operator. And he also understood that for a company to be something other than just this kind of clickbaity thing online, it needs a soul behind it. And that soul came from me, and I mean, it's gone on and it's far bigger than I ever was and would ever be. But it's still like there's like everything that we do, it has a little bit of my imprint on it. And I think that that's something that makes it very different than just like a market analysis. Okay, we want an energy drink that targets 18 to 25-year-old men who do MMA. But you can do that. You can absolutely do that, and it might be successful. But it always just has this kind of hollow feeling behind it versus there
Yeah.
being really like a soul into it. So I think when people are venturing into this, really understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then try to find folks that can complement that. And if you are an operator, if you can find somebody who has integrity and is on a mission, and you can align with someone like that to develop things. And if you can keep your own ego in check and just be like, I am here to serve this person's mission, which, I want to promote health. And so and James just like almost carte blanche, like I keep expecting them to put me out to pasture. I'm 53 and it's a bunch of young whippersnappers on the team. And that over time, they just actually have brought me in more and more on the team because of my experience, and again because the way that my thinking has influenced the company. And I somewhat jokingly, I tell James, I'm like, well, we haven't fucked up much yet, so like, we'll keep doing this thing. But I think really understanding where your lane lines are and are not, where your strengths lie, and then trying to put all that together. And one final thought is that the ability to build a good team is more important than a good idea. You could have a nominal idea with a great team, and you've got a chance at winning. You could have the best idea in the world, but if you're unable to build a team, which I'm not personally, I'm not a team builder.
I would agree with you. I think I'm
Yeah,
22, and I think a lot of people that listen, like, they should focus on what you just said with being not only, either a visionary or an operator. I personally have always struggled just like recruiting talent and hiring talent. My girlfriend works at PwC and she's insane at building talent. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, I know that I need to go out and find somebody that can actually go out and build a team. While I would say that you and I might be visionaries. What do you think? So, well, actually, before I ask this question, just to get like a little bit more tactical, what with Element specifically, what is like the breakdown? Like, how'd you guys like structure it out? How do you say, okay, James, you run 50% of this. I'm going to be available for this many hours. Like, or did you guys just like, what are your specific roles? Is he in charge of like running the actual day-to-day operations? You're just like stepping in and helping out with ideas. Like, how does that all work?
Oh man, that's a really good question, and it's changed a lot over time. So like again, when we first launched, James had that Proton Enterprises team, and there was James, Sharon, Blake, Andrew, Lou. That was it. So it was like 5 people, and
Okay.
folks wore a lot of fucking hats. Like
Yeah.
they wore a lot of hats. One person did supply chain and finance and this and that, and over time we have grown into these different divisions and whatnot. We have I think it was year two and a half. We brought in this gal Brianna, who's our COO, and she's amazing. Like she is an absolute battle axe, and a bunch of these folks came from Yale, so like it's that people
Yeah.
that they knew, lots of people who did collegiate sports at different levels. So we found that people with an athletic background, they're just used to grinding and hard work, and that has paid big dividends for us. But we have a supply chain group. We have like the senior leadership with James, Brianna, some of the C-suite people. Uh, we don't even really have a marketing group. Like we do a lot of partnerships with folks, and that just as an aside, early on, we just grew to absolutely hate social media and kind of like the ugly features of it. And so, although we
Yeah.
have a social media presence, we really leaned into building partnerships with folks versus like trying to just like have ourselves own the social media landscape. But
How, to not to cut you off, I was going
yeah.
to ask you when it comes to partnerships, you've partnered with Modern Wisdom with Chris and Andrew Huberman. Like these are some huge names,
Hmm.
and I know that you went on Chris's show right during I think COVID, and you were
Yep.
on Joe Rogan and stuff. What is it like, or how did you go about building these partnerships? Because when I was talking to Ryan at Bucked Up too, that's like a huge thing they lean on is partnering with like Conor McGregor and Alex Eubank to build that affiliate network, and he had that background and experience. Was that a huge strategy that you knew would work if we landed these names that and then they helped promote the brand because that's also what they stand by, is health and fitness.
I'll definitely give some secret sauce here. Like this is some inside baseball on this. What we you always like there's just this gut sense that like if somebody's popular on the internet, you could probably sell some swag through them.
Yeah.
You've got fitness influencer, hot chick, hot dude, whatever. But very early on, what we discovered was like you could have somebody that was like super good looking. They had 10 million Instagram followers or what have you, but the people were mainly there because it was like good looking person. It didn't do particularly well. It was okay. But if you had somebody that had 100,000 followers, but they were a coach or a doctor or a chiro that was really good at talking about like functional medicine, what we call trusted health authorities, those
Yeah.
people fucking crushed it.
Oh
And
yeah.
and
Andrew
the
Huberman is like the god. I the
he's
fact.
a trusted health authority, and although Chris, he's just a trusted authority. Like he's just so good at interviewing folks that
Yeah.
and he talks about health and clearly like he's a jacked, painfully handsome dude and everything, but like just his intelligence and his wisdom so comes across that you're kind of like, yeah, I totally dig this guy. Like you'd have to be a real asshole to not like Chris. Like he's just a
Definitely.
great guy. And so what we found was that you could have a not particularly well known person, but maybe 100,000. You still
Sorry.
there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Sorry,
had
my
some
camera
green
just
screen
it does that. Yeah.
glitched. No worries. You could have a person with 100,000 followers, but they were really well regarded and they just punch so above their weight class relative to somebody, they've got an insight on this. I remember there was this super good looking gal. She had 2 million Instagram followers, but she's just a model. And I'm not saying just a model to diminish that, but she did this campaign where she was trying to sell these kind of custom t-shirts
Yeah.
and she sold 35 t-shirts. And she's like, I can't believe that this is all that happened. And this, I was kind of like, okay, well, just, good looks are great, big following is great, but if people are just there because you look good in a tight t-shirt and good pair of pants, like that may not be enough. And because we
Yeah.
really are trying to sell health, our disproportionate success was finding trusted health authorities to partner with. And we developed, and I won't share much of this, but I'll give you the big broad brushstrokes. We really identified some key features of what went into what we would call an A tier, partner.
Yeah.
And then we would look at our B and C tier partners and try to see where there was a delta there. Like there's, across the board, we've got this spreadsheet with these, 15 characteristics that define this A tier partner. And the B tier partner is missing 4 or 5 of these. The C tier partner is missing 10 of these. And we would circle back with them and like, hey, we think that you would do better if you develop some stuff here and develop some stuff here. And so we actually put a lot of time and resources into helping these B and C tier partners become A tier partners
How
because when
how
they were
how
more
success
successful.
how successful is that, or how long does it take to develop talent like that? Because I assume if somebody's making content and then you approach them and you like start telling them, "Hey, we advise that you should probably do these things if you want to, be successful." Maybe there's some pushback, or were you basically like really giving out so much goodwill and value to people that they're like, "Yeah, of course, we're just gonna make some tweaks and change up the persona a little bit," and it actually works consistently.
Our guy Blake would be the one to ask that. Like, I hear about this. I don't know how the sausage was made exactly on that.
Got
Like,
it.
I don't know
Got
how
it.
much pushback there was. But what I do know is that we have monthly meetings where we check in, and we have much more frequent check-in meetings too. But we would describe, oh, we just brought up these 3 B tiers to A tier level, and their revenue was much higher. And the cool thing is that if they were in an active ad campaign and they started doing these tweaks, then immediately they saw better conversion and more revenue. So I mean, it was very empirical,
Yeah.
and it's like it either works or it doesn't. Yeah.
When picking affiliates, and not only just affiliates, but when you build out like what the brand feels like, what it looks like, the colors, and you just like build out the brand guideline for Element, I assume that you did a lot of research and you spent a lot of time because the brand almost feels so solid. There's like not many things that I would say, if anything at all, about any of the products or any of the people that are affiliates for the products that seems like misaligned. And is that a huge focus? Do you feel like a lot of brands will just go out and be like, anybody out there that has a big following will be an affiliate, and we don't even care what it really looks like, and we'll post every video that goes viral. We don't care. And I really do think that you were a little bit more curated with your approach. Am I wrong there?
We're pretty curated, and even on just like the basic brand feel, we worked with a guy that had done branding for like Coca-Cola for 20 years, and he sat down with me, the other co-founders too, Luis Villaseñor. He lives in Mexico City, but he's been very influential, but he's definitely more arm's length with the brand. But this guy Dan sat down with me, and it was 3 days of just asking me questions. Where did I grow up? What do I like? I'm into science. I did a biochem degree. Like it was closer to a therapy session.
Yeah.
He just really got to know who I am. And that is where, like, so I'm a chemist. And so I really like chemistry. And that's where, like, this periodic table
Look
kind of
comes
look
from.
thing came from. And originally, we had like some electron orbitals and some things like that. Like, we were really, of sodium and potassium and magnesium. We really riffed off of that. And so, I mean, it was 3 days of this guy just asking me questions and riffing and whiteboarding that we arrived at. Okay, element LMNT. We like elements. We like chemistry. The kid, the
It's so
classic like
clever.
periodic table block. It is. It's cool. It was very intentional. There was a lot of thought that went into it, and I think if you're going to stand something up, and again, this goes back to if you have somebody that is kind of like the heart and soul of the thing. And again, it's not that they have to be on every piece of literature or I'm not. I pop up in some of the ads here and there, like I'll have a voice outtake or something here and there, but it's not like every moment is about me. It's not like Robb Wolf's company, but
Yeah.
I am in a ton of it. And there is, I think, relative to a lot of other things, like there's this actual feel that's like, man, there's kind of something behind this. And so I think that just gave us a really solid start. And then because there is kind of a persona behind the brand that feels real, then when we plug into work with our partners, also early on, we just wanted to tell the stories about our partners, and so it's like, yeah, somebody who's a firefighter and they run a CrossFit gym. And so it's like, we tell their story. We have Tia Claire, we worked with her, and yeah, she's like this amazing athlete and she's a mom. And so we
Yeah.
just tell those stories. And it's like, oh, by the way, she uses Element too, and she feels like it helps her. But like, here's this awesome person doing great things, and we want to tell their story. And tangentially, it's like, oh yeah, they're involved with Element also. So instead of
Yeah.
beating people over the head with this thing, it's like we have the amazing opportunity to partner with awesome people, and they like our product, and so the product almost becomes tangential to the fact that we're telling a story about real people who do wonderful things in the world, and then like we get to benefit from the slipstream of them just being wonderful folks. Yeah.
I love it. Peter Kell came on my podcast and he builds a lot of brands, and his whole thing is taking actual people who have this big long story that you can relate to and putting them in front of a brand and then using that to drive like VSL traffic. And it almost sounds like without the stories, like you look on the back of the box, the story of anybody that has interacted with the brand, you see those stories and it's like you find a point to relate to, whether you're a firefighter, a
Yep.
mom, or something like that. And I feel like without the personality, you literally lose the ability to relate to just a logo. It's like
Yep.
LMNT. It looks cool, boom. But like you said, it's hollow. And now there's like a story, and you're like, oh, that's kind of like me. And I feel like that's where tribal cult like followings
Hmm.
start to build in. That's like super, super cool. What sorry, my light just cut out. What so when building a brand, specifically when you built Element, what you sat down for 3 days, you're workshopping the logo, you're workshopping the design of everything. How many iterations did you have to go through with like the name of the company and everything? Like I hear a lot of people give advice saying, oh, you shouldn't spend too much time. It doesn't really matter. You should just build a really good product. Don't focus on the brand. That's not important. But because your brand is so powerful and it is so important, how much time did you really spend weaving out what the packaging looks like and the colors and the flavors and everything like that?
So like the brand beginning of the packaging, and I mean the packaging has evolved enormously over time, particularly as we've gone into different retail settings. Like Target wants their own proprietary thing, and Costco wants their own thing, and so we've had to constantly update and iterate on that. It was probably like 2 weeks to a month, before we arrived at you know this and kind of
Yeah.
our basic story, health through hydration. Like we had a pretty good operating system there. 2 weeks to a month. I think that that's a reasonable time. I do agree that folks can spend too much time trying to develop like the perfect brand and name and all this stuff. We're actually helping some family members start a regenerative skincare line, and we had our family is Italian on my wife's side of the family, and she and her cousin are standing this thing up. So we wanted like an Italian name behind it, and there's like sentire and volere and all these things. Those things were all taken. They were really
Yeah.
really cool, but those were all taken. So we defaulted to what was really like a third or fourth place idea on the naming. But then as we've moved forward, it's like, oh, that name's just fine. And now we have these beautiful logos that are emerging and all this type of stuff. And the story behind it is about this family that's into regenerative agriculture and also like skincare. And so it was kind of a similar thing. Maybe 6 weeks were spent kicking things, and we worked with the same guy that did the Element branding in this process, where
Yeah.
it's my wife's cousin Nina who's the main driver with that, and I had some input, but we really wanted this thing to be about Nina, not me. Like a skincare line backed by me is not going to go very far. You need somebody far better looking than I am to get in and steward that thing. But it really, what has emerged is a ton of Nina's sensibilities and values and all that stuff. And it was probably, again, a month, 6 weeks of pretty intense, like, do we like this? Do we not like that? And I equate it to like trying on a sweater. It's like,
Yeah.
does this feel good? Does it look right and everything? So I don't know if, folks would think that 6 weeks or a month is too short, too long, but I do think that some just intentionality around building that brand,
Yeah.
like go for that. Like put some effort into that, for sure. Yeah.
I definitely think 6 weeks is way more time than humans when they build brands is like they're dedicating. They might spend like an hour or two and they're like, this takes forever. And it's like, I can promise most of the biggest brands have spent months iterating on the logos and the
Mm-hmm.
packaging.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason I say that is because that's like the first thing you notice when you try the brand is like what it actually looks like, it feels like, and you have to make a decision of, is this something that I want to put into my body? And if it doesn't look like something you want to put in your body, you're probably just going to stay away from it because the packaging looks like, garbage. But
Right.
you guys crushed it in every aspect. Um, more of like a question for young entrepreneurs. Do you think that in the modern era with like the advancement in social media and technology and AI that a lot of people should still make the decision to go to a really good college and go work at a job and then maybe start an entrepreneur venture? Or do you think that the need and necessity to go to college and go that traditional route is starting to fade into the distance?
I really do question the utility of the college track. Now, when I say that, a huge number of the folks that we have hired and work with are
Yale
because they met
students.
each other at Yale,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, is that really true? I do think that there's still this reality that, particularly within that Ivy League scene, like I'm a state school. I did my undergrad at Chico State University in chemistry. I think we had 12 people graduate that year with a chemistry degree and whatnot. So very small school, but you do have this selection process that occurs for good or ill that you hit that Ivy League scene or something similar. There's a lot of wealthy, smart people that hit there with wealthy, smart kids who
Yeah.
get all the enrichment and all that type of stuff. And I think you build a Rolodex that's just like incredible.
Insane. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know that it's 100% necessary, but it's if you do go to college, I would really encourage, man, a biology degree, a chemistry degree, learn some great writing. But if you can get a little bit of a scientific steeping, I think it gives you a disproportionate advantage. Like you just understand the way the world works a little bit better. Like another MBA, another business degree. I don't know how much that gives you versus like if you can get some comparative advantage, like an engineering degree or something, you really fucking understand the world. Again, economics, thermodynamics, evolution. Like, I think it gives you kind of a disproportionate advantage, and it's interesting. All of the folks here, they didn't necessarily do specifically like a science degree, but all of them ended up with a good science background. Like they had like a minor in chemistry or minor in biology and stuff like that too. So
Yeah.
if you go, I would be really intentional about how and why you go to university. I do think like the next 5 years, like I started studying Italian 7 months ago because we took all of our family to Italy back in March and I really enjoyed it and I'm continuing to go forward. Like I use Grok now
I
to
love it.
have conversations with Italian every day because there's like this spoken thing and like Duolingo is good, but I'm like, oh my God, Grok is way better. And I don't know that I would ever need to set foot in a university class to become, C2 level, proficient in a language and be able
Yeah.
to sit and take the citizenship test with this thing. And I do think that that is going to be a fascinating change, like AI and even things like Khan Academy and stuff like that.
Oh
Like
yeah. Khan Academy. That's like what I grew
it's
up on.
crazy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. So I don't know. I like and I guess one of the big things that I would say is, can you emerge out of college without debt or without significant debt? Because man, getting out from under that is a bastard.
I so
I Yeah.
yes, so that's like what I'm struggling with right now. I'm like 70 grand in debt, and that's so I have a lot of mentors that said before I went to college, it was unwise because of the amount of debt I'd walk away from. And I think if that didn't exist and the amount colleges are charging for admission didn't exist, then yeah, 100% just being around really smart people is never a bad thing. especially if you like, there's the average, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around, quote. A lot of people, I think, if you don't go to college, then you probably just go get a job, and you're probably not around people that are actively growing their mind and learning. And then they just say, well, I'm done with educating myself. So I could definitely see the argument with both sides. I've been to college. I've taken time off of college. I grew this business, and it seems like every time I step away from college, I make more money because I'm not focused on studies. But for the average American, or just like the regular person that's like debating, should I go to school or not? I think, your advice definitely is impactful. So
Just one other really quick thought on that. Like, I
yeah,
think like Google and Meta and a bunch of these big tech outfits no longer require a college degree,
yeah,
because you can go learn coding, all these different ways. And so like if you have a really burning passion for stuff, I would just kind of look at, is there a route to doing it absent college? Because if there was, let's say CPG or something like that, like consumer
yeah,
product goods, supply chain is a bastard. Like I remember an interview with Elon Musk, and they were like, "You've been so amazingly good at building all of these supply chain driven things,
oh
like
yeah,
Tesla and SpaceX, and like you have to be sourcing your niobium, 4 years in advance to make sure it goes here and there and everything." And he just said, "I'm disproportionately good at being okay with suffering, because like supply chains suck." And
yeah.
supply chain doesn't seem like a really like sexy
Oh,
angle
it's yeah,
on, but it's fucking critical. And again, unless you go into a just completely
service-based
technology
business.
based, either service based or technology based business, if you're
Yeah,
building anything physical, you're going to have a supply chain issue around that. And man, people that are good at supply chain, and funny enough, we've found that people that had like a construction management background or an engineering, like a civil engineering background where they were building something, they had to think long term about where shit was coming from and where it was
yeah,
going, and this needs to go in before this and this. They do amazingly well at supply chain, and
yeah,
you can find yourself really well compensated at some sort of a blistering pace growth company that has a need for people who know supply chain. So if you're really good at
yeah.
detail orientation, all that, and you could develop all those skills completely either with or without university.
Yeah, one of my good friends here in Boston, he does supply chain consulting, and he just goes to New Jersey every week, and he's making 250K a year, and he's like, it's and that's like on the lower side of people in the world of supply chain. I fully agree. I try to ask him like, how does it work? Because I would like to eventually at some point in my life step into a physical product based business like Element or something like that if I really found a need in the market, but it requires you to know everything about supply chain, and that's like something that not many people want to spend their time learning. They just want to do the sexy thing, like post a video of them on a yacht or whatever on TikTok. So yeah, supply chain is very interesting. um I hear this quote a lot from a lot of people that most businesses fail, 90% of businesses fail within the first 3 years. And the fact that you've had, I would say, home run after home run in the business world, what is the advice to a young person, or even if they're older in their 30s or 40s, and they say, you know what, I'm going to start a business with the odds against you and everything not stacking in your favor? How could somebody know if they're going to be successful, or do they just say, you know what, I'm going to do this even if I'm not successful? It seems like you've basically been successful at all the ventures that you've done. How are you able to position yourself to make that happen and not be one of those 90% of people that just fail in the first 3 years?
Well, first thing, nobody has seen where we've buried the ashes of the things that didn't work. Like we've certainly had stuff that did not work.
Yeah.
And one of our problems is that we were too early on the scene with a number of things. Like we tried doing a couple of things that were a decade too early, and the technology just wasn't there. Like a meals delivered program and some things like that, similar to like Blue Apron and some things very similar to that. But man, it's tough. I think one thing is just kind of your risk tolerance. Like, are you cool with just not knowing what's next? Like
Yeah.
for 25 years, I didn't eat anything that I didn't kill. Like it was my blog, my books, my travel, which is a small scale business, but like there's a lot of unknown with that. My
Yeah.
books did well, but it's like I write my own books. That's also kind of a unique thing. Like I wrote all three of my books. 98% of the health books are ghostwritten. They'll interview the person, somebody else writes them, which is why they usually have a very similar feel about them. They may be good in
That's very interesting. I didn't
information.
even know. I had no idea.
Yeah, each time I went to do my book deals, they're like, "So who's writing your book?" And I'm like, "You're
Me.
looking at them." They're like, "No way, really?" Like, it's like, wow.
Wow.
So my wife and I are pretty risk tolerant, and that's a fortunate thing. We're not complete idiots. We're kind of like, okay, well, I'm comfortable with this. I'm comfortable with that. When we were running the gym, it was a bastard to get the thing going, and several times we just sat down and we're like, okay, we're going to put a 6 month plan in, and if our revenue is not here by 6 months, we're done. We're closing up ship. I'll go finish a PhD in chemistry or something, and we'll do something else. So we did have some hard exit lines around doing that stuff. And fortunately, we were able to grow these things. So I think really understanding your risk tolerance is
Yeah.
huge. If you're married or in a relationship, like the risk tolerance of the other individual is just massive. I have a good friend who did 20 years in the military. He's a pilot and a great career. His wife has been a school teacher for 20 something years, and he wanted to stand up this business, and he had a really good idea, and he had a decent bite in that market, and she wanted him to take on a job like flying for FedEx because it's real guaranteed and it's
Yeah.
good money and everything. I'm like, dude, you guys are set up pretty good. You've got a pension from the military until you croak. Even when you croak, your wife gets the pension. If you want this business to go, you need to be 100% present for it. You
Yeah.
can't you can't part-time a business like this. And he kind of heard me, but like his wife being a school teacher, which school teachers are wonderful, but they tend to be like the most risk averse folks that I've ever seen in my life. Like they just
M-
want a guaranteed salary, and they want their pension, and they want, my healthcare is this, that, and the other. And so he handed this thing off. He tried to hire somebody to run it. It's run really poorly. And now they're getting ready to like sell the thing off for pennies on the dollar for what it was worth. And I really think that they had a legit chance at going for it, but he opted for the known guaranteed, good income. Like if FedEx pilots make a decent chunk of change, and he loves flying too. So there was
Yeah.
a compelling thing with that. So I think you have to really look at your risk tolerance and be super honest about that, because it is hard. There's a ton of unknowns. Even when things work, it's a bastard. There's all the shit that pops up. Like you are the responsible party when things go sideways. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I think people have this delusion that if it gets bigger than me, or if it gets to a certain income revenue threshold, then I no longer have to deal with problems. And it's like, that's when the problems start. And it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, even with Element, right? Like there's controversy. You do enough digging, you'll find people that are always angry with everything. And it's just, you never outrun that as the entrepreneur. Me, yeah, I agree. My dad was a school teacher, so his risk adverse, parenting was like, don't do this. This is going to wind you up working at a gas station. And I'm 17 and I'm like, I want to publish 4 books, start a podcast, travel the world, build a business. And that's exactly what I did. But it was like 3 years of $0 and nothing happening. And now it's just growing. And I do feel like risk tolerance is the huge thing. I don't know why. Maybe it's when you're younger, you feel like you have this invincibility of like, I could just do anything I want. And maybe when you get older, neuroplasticity starts to fade, and then you're like more set in your ways, and you're not going to try, risky things. But it is always interesting to see, like, you start a supplement brand, and then another person starts a supplement brand, or 100 people start a supplement brand, and then only one seems to explode into like the stratosphere. And then when you ask that person what it takes, they're like, oh, just work hard. And it's like, I feel like there's so many more components to having a successful thing than just, dedicating yourself and working hard. And risk tolerance definitely is something that is, I would say, unspoken about. When building something, if it's failing, and I would measure failing by, it's not producing revenue, or you're losing money month over month, and you start to like lose motivation. At what point is like a good stop loss? Like when you say, okay, you said 6 months. I think most people don't have a stop loss, and they just are like, sunk cost fallacy. I'm going to ride this thing
Mhm.
until we both die. what is like a safe bet for people if they maybe want to be a little bit more risk adverse?
I don't know a perfect answer on that. Like for my wife, when we really started asking some hard questions around the gym business, we were maybe 3 years in, and it was just it was a grind. And early in CrossFit, there was no business support at all. It's like you just make it up as you go, and nobody knew what they were doing. And
Yeah.
I remember one day we had a pretty good sized class. It's like 40 people in there, but like we were still both working we were working physical therapy assistant jobs to support the gym. Like we were taking money out of that to keep the
Wow.
gym open and running. The first 2 years of running the gym, my wife and I together made less than $10,000 a year. I still like I framed our tax returns on that shit, just as a reminder. And so we had a 400 square foot apartment with no air conditioning in Chico, California. It gets 120 degrees in the summer, and
Wow.
we fucking struggled. And I can't believe she stuck with me. Like she's actually smart and good looking. But at Chico at that time, there were 5 women for every one guy, and like just yeah, pretty good odds in
Yeah,
that scenario. For guys, maybe that's another reason to go to university. But she was
definitely.
willing to gut this thing out and see it through because we knew that we were helping our clients. But one night, we had a pretty good sized class, but we were like, God, we're just not making any money. Like, we're still not breaking even. We have a lot of attrition. We sat down and counted all of the waivers that we had gotten over the last 6 months. We had 1,000 people do a free class, and we had fewer than 100 clients. So like our retention was dog shit, like
Wow.
awful. And so we sat down. We're like, okay, we love doing this. We believe in it, but like this must turn around within 6 months. We can't keep working multiple jobs to support this thing. So we drew a line in the sand. We worked backwards. We're like, we want to be making this much money within 6 months, which means we need this type of clientele. And then we actually, because at that time there were no business systems for gyms like that, we went to a yoga conference that was talking about how to run better yoga and Pilates
Wow. That's it.
businesses. And we told them what we were doing. And they're like, well, you need to do some personal training. You need these group classes. You need a developmental program, which is where my wife developed this thing called the on-ramp for CrossFit, and gyms all over the world still use the on-ramp program. And we started instituting this stuff, and within 6 months, we were doing pretty well. And it was right around that time that we were picked as one of Men's Health top 30 gyms in America because we really had built a presence for ourselves, but we were really willing to take a hard look at what we were doing, recognize that it wasn't working, go somewhere tangentially to figure out how to do it better. And we drew a line in the sand that was like, if this doesn't turn around in 6 months, we're doing something else. And so I don't know what the perfect timeline is. Like that's going to depend on the person, and again, like their risk tolerance and how much assets we were lucky that we had an apartment that was like $400 a month. We had
Yeah.
2 cars that nothing broke on them during this period, because if they did, we couldn't have repaired it.
Yeah.
And we were able to gut that out. And the gym ended up launching my books and the blog and the podcast and all this other stuff, because we had this physical presence where we interfaced with just thousands of people. And then I started doing seminars all around the world talking about nutrition. And that's what developed my Paleo Solution book that made New York Times bestseller. So there was a decade of really hard work, and 7 years of that decade was making probably less than 50 grand a year between the two of us. So you just, fuck, man, you got to be willing to suffer for a while. But you also, at some point, you need to be able to say, okay, enough may be enough. Like
Yeah.
I'm willing to go do something else. And there were lots of moments where I'm like, man, working in a lab and 9 to 5 and a vacation would be really good. I think we were 6 years into the gym, and we had not taken a vacation. and one of our main trainers were like, hey, we want to go to Nicaragua. Can you manage things for a week? And she's like, sure. And part of me was just like, I hope this thing burns to the ground while we're gone, you know. Fortunately or unfortunately, it didn't. But you know, there was a lot of struggle there, and maybe that's something to focus on too. Is that like that brick and mortar gym allowed us to do all this other stuff, but it was also a service-based business that has a very limited revenue that you can ever pull out of it. So
Yeah.
it's a mixed bag. Like it also allowed us to do a bunch of other things that were not constrained by physical space and service based, but it also like we put our prime like a business building years into that thing. You know, so I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is there. It facilitated all this other stuff, but it was also a shitload of work to make maybe about 100 grand, 110 grand a year, maybe if you were really grinding on it.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of that is, especially in the modern culture of social media, like washed over. People think it's instant gratification. If I start a business in 90 days, then I'll be a millionaire. And it's like 7 years. Like one of the founder of one of the largest electrolyte companies on the globe, it took him 7 years just to like get to a point where, you know, CrossFit's like a well-known thing. And now everyone knows what CrossFit is if you're in fitness. But most people, I think they'll go in 90 days, 120 days, maybe even a year, and they'll say, this doesn't work at all. And it's like, of course it works. It's like you just haven't put in the time. And then I guess the tangent question to this, well, I'll ask one more question and then we'll do a rapid fire and then I'll let you go. I don't want to take too much of your time.
Cool.
When picking an opportunity, we talked about gaps in the market. I feel like some people they pick things that just don't, I mean, it's not that they don't work, but they don't even like see that, okay, this thing's really capped, or maybe it's too saturated, or maybe it's just something that's not like a good opportunity to spend your time on. Like we don't need any more newspaper companies, and people will just like pick silly things because they're quote unquote passionate about it. When picking gaps in the market, what's your advice to that person when if somebody's sitting down and saying, okay, I want to start a bakery, and obviously they probably shouldn't start a bakery, you're like, okay, here's like a framework that you should follow on picking a good opportunity, walking it through and like analyzing it. What is it? What is your advice to that person?
Man, there's a lot to unpack there. There is a book. It's pretty old now. It's called The E Myth, the
I love it.
entrepreneurial myth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
And
an E-Myth. I think there's a revised version of that too. I have
yeah,
that. Yeah, it's a good book.
uh, you know, so like if you're thinking about, let's use the bakery analogy. Go work in a bakery. Try to go work in several bakeries and try to figure out how to run every element of that, you know, from the baking to the management, the books, the back end. When I was looking at medical school, I did medical billing for an integrative medical clinic. So it had doctors and chiros and naturopaths, and I did all the billing for it because I wanted to understand that side because I had talked to enough doctors that they were like, I have no idea how the billing works. And like they didn't, their clinic didn't really do that well. And so I really wanted to understand that. So if there's an opportunity to go do something, you know, and again, like the more service-based deal, there's usually an opportunity to find something similar to what you want to do and just go like throw yourself into it. And you should be able to do every piece of that thing. And then you start figuring out how to systematize that. And then you'll have to figure out if you do want to stand up your own gig and go from there. You know, these service-based businesses are interesting, and God bless everybody who does them. Like, I'm really grateful for the folks who run
I'm one of those
restaurants.
people. Well,
Yeah.
I do an online service base. I don't run a restaurant, but yeah,
Okay. Yeah, but it's oftentimes a lot of work to get the same or less than what you would get just working as an employee for one of these things, you know, and a
yeah,
lot less headache and all that stuff.
yeah.
So that's a tough deal. You know, it's when another piece of the question, which is like identifying these opportunities. 6 years ago, going on 7 years ago, I don't know that anybody would have looked at the electrolyte space and thought that there was a gap in it. You know, Gatorade and Powerade, and you know, it seemed like there were plenty of things there. I just happened to have a very contrarian view of sodium and a pretty contrarian view of health generally, but sodium in particular, and saw this population of folks that eat on the lower carb side of things that definitely need more salt, more sodium. Like that was just unequivocal. The naturesis of fasting is what it's called. Is when your insulin is low, then you lose sodium, and
Yeah.
so there was this need there. So I don't know how many other situations there are where you can find something like that, but I get ideas all the time in like a protein gummies and this and that and the
Protein
other.
gummies, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to shit on that idea, but like when I think about protein in a grab and go form, I'm like a bar. Like I'm just a
Oh
bar guy. I
yeah.
don't really like shakes or whatever. And I do, even though there's tons of bars around, there's all these little iterations. These people don't want corn. These people don't want allulose. So I think that there's ways to find little niches that you can operate in. There's another great book, Red Ocean Strategy, which
Oh
is
yeah.
basically trying to, what's some little take on the main riff that there may actually be an opportunity hidden there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it,
So yeah.
it's interesting. I think a lot of people, I mean, I think there's two sides of it. One is where like people think that they have to come up with like the new reinventing the wheel to like an insane thing. Like I want to reinvent like protein or whatever. And it's like, you're going way too far overboard. That doesn't necessarily work. You're not Albert Einstein. And then there's the other side of things where it's like you blue ocean strategy, perfect example. You can walk into something as simple as electrolytes and turn out a couple $100 million business out of it if you actually know what you're doing. But it's
Hmm.
also like things like you specifically, Rob, know things about the world, about chemistry. Somebody like me, if I was going to start an electrolyte company, I would have no idea. I would have 30 years of learning and knowledge to even come up to the conclusion that there's a gap in that market. And most people just aren't educated on enough things to get these ideas. They think, oh, well, I don't know what the world wants. It's like, because you don't know a lot of things, and that's okay. So that might be a good reason to go to college or get a good degree in like chemistry or biology or something like that. But I think if people, would you agree, if they like educate themselves more on the world and they go explore and see things, then they might start getting better ideas?
Yeah. And I will say a common thread is that I always considered myself a service-based individual.
Yeah.
Like I feel like my whole business has been customer service essentially. Like I put
Yeah.
out some information and then people ask questions, and those questions are where I get the next idea for the next book, the next podcast, the next blog, and all that type of stuff. And so I was really actively working to just be of service to people and to be helpful. And then what I would encounter, if you can be a little bit quantifiable, it's like, oh, I've had 80 questions related to like muscle cramps and sleep disturbances, and you start finding these patterns. Like
Yeah.
if somebody is they figure out some sort of like service-based thing around like automobile ownership, or I don't know, I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
And then you start, you put out information that legitimately helps people, and you figure out some ways to monetize it or whatnot.
Yeah.
But then you start noticing it's like, gosh, social media, email, when I meet people in person, they have this one question. And then
Yeah.
that one question is maybe another service-based thing or maybe a physical product that actually addresses that. But I think it's very hard to just kind of sit down and like,
Come up with an
zen your
idea.
way to that.
Yeah.
You have to be actually interfacing with people and figuring out where their pain points are, and then maybe you figure out something that could be super helpful for that. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the last thing I'll say, and we'll do rapid fire. It's very interesting. Like having the internet and being able to access people's problems and just like going on Reddit or going on ChatGPT and just observing on social media, like people in the comments of photos and posts and things will tell people like their problems. They'll be like, how do I start a business, or how do I get started in health, or how do I, what's the best workout to do? And all these questions are their own tangent and product if you chose to spend time doing those things
Hmm.
at a high level. And it's like, I think some people just believe that if you just sit in a room and you wait for an idea to hit, it doesn't, I don't think it works like that. I think you actually need data from the world. Okay, so switching over to rapid fire questions. Question number one, you don't have to answer this if it's too personal. How much, what is the run rate currently for Element this year?
I'm going to pass on that one. Yeah,
Yeah, no, you're
yeah.
good.
It's
You're
it,
good.
it's good, and it's probably better than what folks think. Is all I'll say on that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, what was it last year or something? Just like some public, there's probably a public.
So I'll give you the first 3 years. Year
Okay,
one was 1.6. Year two was 7.8, and year three was 38. And then I'll step off the train after
No,
that.
you're good. You're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Question number two. If there was one book that you would recommend to all of the listeners that would radically change their life in some way, shape, or form, what would that book be and why?
Oh man, that's a great question. One book. Hmm. It's kind of silly, but the richest man in Babylon would
That's
be
a
a
good,
good one.
yeah. Compound
It
interest.
Yeah, and I'll give you a little backstory on that. When I started the CrossFit gym, I had a little bit of equity in a biotech I was working for, and I cashed out of that and used that and some student loans to start the gym. And
You
I had a
wait, you use student loans to start a gym?
oh yeah, it was awful.
I,
Terrible.
how does that even get approved? They're like, what college do we send it to? And you're like,
I
my gym.
well, it goes into your account for like living and whatnot. So
Oh,
I
gotcha, gotcha.
maintained a bare minimum of academic status to be able to grab some money out of that. But so I had all this student loan debt. It was in default, and my wife was like, "Dude, you got to do something about this." I'm like, "Well, we're barely getting by." And she had read this book, "The Richest Man in Babylon," which is basically like you have to really honor money, and also it just said no matter what your situation is, every dollar that comes in, 10% of it goes into savings. And
Yeah.
we didn't have two nickels to rub together, and I kind of pushed back on this stuff, but my wife is much smarter than I am, and I was like, okay, I'll give this thing a shot. And it was a couple of months down the road, and we had $1,000 in our savings, and we started then like the Dave Ramsey like debt snowball,
Yeah, the
like we paid off
snowball.
this credit
Yeah.
card, paid off that credit
Avalanche.
card,
Yeah.
and then we were able to pay off my student loans, which were significantly more than yours. So there is a way out
The,
of that.
yeah,
Um,
so yesterday, first time in my life, I spent 11 grand on my student loans. So that was like,
nice,
yeah,
congrats.
the start. But anyway, continue.
So that book was huge for me. Like you could call it a trite little book because it's very
It's like
simple. It's kind
literally
of
super thin.
yeah,
Yeah.
super thin, but it changed my life because even though I was still in a shit situation, because I changed the way that I looked at things, it was slightly less shitty, and it gave me a route to getting out of that stuff. And then just tangentially to that, the Dave Ramsey stuff I think was really really valuable. I think his views on debt change once you get some significant wealth because you can loan against debt and you don't have to pay capital gains on it and stuff like that. And that's a whole other discussion for another day. So I think that debt is an absolute poison when you're living at the margins, and then can actually be something that you leverage when you've got some assets. Yeah.
So the next rapid fire question off of debt. What um what is the most you guys capital raised for Element?
So we started everything with less than 200 grand initially,
Oh
and
wow.
then yeah it was super lean starting it up. Initially, we did do a crowd fund through Republic, but we only did that because we wanted people that were interested in the company to be able to come along with us for the
Yeah.
for the ride. I think that ended up being either 1.5 million or 3 million. I forget. We did not need it. We've been, knock on wood, very very
Profitable.
fortunate.
Yeah.
We've been profitable since month two, and
That's
so
awesome.
so that was cool. But what we ended up with that Republic scenario is I think like 2,500, 3,000 people that they got like this owner letter, and then later we actually sent them like this really awesome. I know this isn't rapid fire answer, but it's just the way I am. But we got these Yeti boxes that are really awesome, and we did a challenge coin like from police, military, and fire that was an
Oh
owner
wow.
coin. Each one of the boxes, our cost was about $700 that we sent to owners. And
Wow.
so we didn't send it to every person because there were some people that put in like $50 and stuff like that. But we sent out a shitload of these things, and people absolutely loved it. And we had like rabid support, rabid fans out of that. So yeah, I think 1.5 or 3, I forget, was the most that we did. And I will throw this out there. Folks, usually if they don't come from a finance background or like a tech background, they're not aware of this. But if you can stand up a business for less than $10 million of initial capitalization, the QSBS, the Qualified Small Business process, is available where when you do have a liquidation event, you can get up to, now it just changed up to $15 million of tax free, or you basically taxless on that, like if you sell some equity or you IPO or something. So
Oh wow.
starting with a giant wad of money is okay, but I find just really quickly, people who start with too much money are not fastidious with the money, and they will piss it away oftentimes. And then also, it makes that whole QSBS option just go away. Yeah.
It seems like a lot of tech companies raise millions of dollars and it just vanishes. But that's amazing. You guys were super
Yeah.
lean with the startup. Next question. What is your favorite element flavor or products? I know because you guys have drinks now.
Yeah, yeah, lemonade, the sparkling lemonade by a mile. Like, absolutely love it. And
Definitely.
I was actually pretty strongly involved in getting that formulation done. And I wanted something as close to country time lemonade as we could humanly get. It's pretty bang on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the final question. What do you think of the new element drink, the one that you've brought into the frame several times, all the flavors, the drink itself?
Oh yeah, so we ran for a number of years with just the stick packs, and those are great. And then we, just as a fun little diversion, James and I were talking late. So what we would do is we would take a Topo Chico, and then I figured out, because if you just pour Topo Chico into the stick pack like it does a volcano, so you dissolve the stick pack in like an ounce or two of flat water and really dissolve it. Then pour the Topo Chico into that, and you would have a bubbly element. And it was amazing. Like, it just tasted great. And so each year we do a company retreat at the PBR, the Professional Bull Riders Association, up in Big Sky, Montana. And one year we just canned some of this stuff. We had like 5 of the flavors that we had in stick pack, and we a small cannery in Portland, we had them do it, and they were amazing. Like, it was
Yeah.
so good. And then we started noodling on this. And it may be a funny aside. We have a couple of investors and also advisors that have done significant beverages, like Honest Tea. Barry Newbalf, who's like the co-founder of Honest Tea, and also Justice Tea or Just Iced Tea, like he launched another iced tea thing. A couple of other people, like the folks who did Celsius, funny enough. We have a guy that's an advisor and investor that was early with Celsius. They told us, for the love of God, don't go into the canned
Beverages?
beverage space. Yeah, don't. You have such a good thing going.
Yeah.
And I actually, this is where, like, I am a little more risk averse than James is. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, should we listen to these guys? And James was basically like, no, we're going to go for it. And so
It
this last year was
was
our first launch into retail with the
yeah,
these guys. Yeah.
I think a couple of weeks ago when I was in Boston, I went to this new, it was actually a CrossFit gym or a HIIT training gym, and they had
Yeah.
one of the cans. So I tried it, did a little review. I definitely prefer your stick packs, to be honest,
Oh,
over the
funny.
cans.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, your brand is like my favorite, so it's great anyways. But yeah, no, Rob, thank you for coming on the show, man. This is amazing. Seriously, like
Well,
everything that you're creating and all the things you've created in the world. I mean, obviously I can't, put it all together in 30 seconds, but you've impacted millions of people all over the world. And the fact that you've sat down with me longer than an hour is really amazing. So thank you.
huge honor to be here, and let's plan another one maybe a year down the road and see where we both are.
Yeah, 100%.